Good evening. Welcome to day 16 of Quarantine and my blog where we help each other find ways to be happier, healthier, and more productive while in quarantine. Today's episode is a continuation of yesterday's where we discussed the FIRE movement. That's financial independence and retire early. The idea of FIRE is being able to retire way before the expected end date of your career or 65 or whatever the case may be, and is based on some very simple calculations. Primarily, that the more you can save, the quicker you can retire. If you're able to save 50% of your salary, invest it at 7% per year, then you should be able to retire in 16 years. This is essentially because after that 16 years, you'll have built up an amount whereby in perpetuity you can take 4% out per year and be able to live at the same rate, at the same amount of money per year as you had during your working years without ever reducing that, that amount that you have in the bank account. So I wanted to take you through a top 10 list of things you can do now in your life in order to set yourself towards FIRE in the future in your working career. So number one is I would recommend that you do the calculations. So look at the number that you feel you would need to live off of on an annual basis, not currently just based on your current situation, but in your retirement years when you might not need to spend as much on cars or clothing or convenience items or whatever else. And then calculate what your FIRE number, so what the added up number of all your investments has to be in order for you to be able to draw down that 4% per year and live comfortably for the rest of your life, essentially. And so to get there, number two would be to look at your current situation. It's very important that you would have a very good idea of what exactly you're spending money on now. Not just a rough idea of how much you spend, but really understanding how much you spend per week on groceries, on coffee, on drinks, on entertainment, on clothing, on whatever the case may be, childcare, school, education, what have you, because only then can you understand where there's maybe some areas for improvement. So if you haven't already, then I encourage you to use a budget app or paper and pen and start calculating how much you spend on a regular basis. You can go through those credit card statements, for instance, or get a rough idea by looking at how much your income is and how much you spend per month and have a better idea of what exactly goes in and goes out on a monthly basis. When you do these calculations and when you try to figure out what currently your capital worth is, so that you can better work towards your retirement number, do include things such as your pension and your investments and your house if you feel that you don't need to own 100% of your house in your retirement, but that you might sell it and use that as an investment or rent it out or something like that. Just get a really good idea. And then when you look through your budget, try and remember that everything you spend per month is then multiplied by 12 and then multiplied by however many years you're going to have to work until you retire. And so that small figure can add up very quickly. So it's important to just do those calculations, also for things on a weekly basis, and be able to understand what exactly they're costing you in the long run, and not just on like the price of a singular cup of coffee. It's important to understand the long-term effects of what that spending is actually costing you in terms of years worked. Number three would be to look at your housing. This is obviously one of the biggest areas in our budgets, and so it would be best to see if there's a way that you can actually save money on your current rent or your mortgage, whatever the case is, and if you really need to have as big a house or as nice an apartment as you currently have, or if you can maybe make do with a little bit less if that meant that you wouldn't have to work as long. So it really depends on the trade-off for you and how important it is free time versus living in a nice house or a big house or keeping up with the Joneses. So number 4 would be to look at your commute. In terms of areas that we can save money, probably the first, if not the second area we can save money is in terms of purchasing automobiles. For most people in the West, especially if you're a 2 or 3 car family, this is an area that it's easy to throw a lot of money down the drain because cars are not an investment. When you purchase a new car, the second you go off the lot, that car is suddenly worth 20 to 25% less than before you bought it. Over the next years, it goes down another 10% per year. And so it's the opposite of an investment. If you got 10% returns on any investment or 25% for the original purchase of it, you would buy it in a heartbeat. But we don't consider this for some reason when we're buying a new car, that we're essentially doing the opposite. And so I'd encourage you, if you do feel you need to own a car, to always purchase secondhand. A couple years old, you'll get almost as new a car, almost as good, like infinitesimally more damage to it or more maintenance, but something that's costs you a lot less, and where you have that much more money you could be investing during that time, as opposed to just sitting in the value of your car. Number 5 would be convenience items. It's very easy to feel a bit peckish and jump into a McDonald's to grab a burger, or when you're at the gas station to grab a chocolate bar, or a shawarma from the guy down the street, when these are not the easiest or cheapest ways to get that sustenance that you might need. And going to a grocery store, preparing your own meals, preparing your coffee at home especially, are areas where you can easily get essentially the same product, but for a third of the price. So try to step away from the convenience items and plan a little bit ahead, so that if you know you're going to need a chocolate bar every single day, don't buy it from the vending machine, just buy a pack at the store and bring one per day with you to work. If you know that you need a coffee every single day, then buy the best beans you can possibly find and a good coffee maker. I have a video on making at-home coffee with using a simple Bodum, and see how much time it would really take to make your own, how good it tastes compared to what you get otherwise, and if it's maybe worth spending that time versus spending the money. Number 6 on the list would be to look at your regular bills and see if there's areas that you could cut. When it comes to insurance, for instance, shopping around a little bit, seeing if a competitor offers a better rate. When you look at your cell phone, are you actually needing the full data package that you're using? Could you link to your Wi-Fi more often? Could you cut the amount of your bill? Do you need to have a brand new cell phone every 2 to 3 years, or could you do with, an iPhone 8 when there's an iPhone 10 out, and thus not having to pay an extra $40 or whatever per month in order to have a new phone in your pocket? Is that worth it? When you do the 40 times 12 times a month times 10 years, is that amount of money worth it to you to have a newer phone versus an older phone? Also look at what other bills you have, and if there are any that you could even get rid of completely. If you have a Netflix account or another internet-based account or satellite service or something you don't even use anymore, that might be an easy area to just call up the provider, cancel your account, and save some money there on a monthly basis. You might consider refinancing your mortgage if you have one. Right now, rates are extremely low. I've heard of being able to get as low as 2.2%, and your mortgage provider might be willing to refinance that for only a minimal payment, a minimal penalty, but over the long run you'll save because currently mortgage rates are super duper low. And you might also decide to refinance your mortgage and take some of the value of your house out and invest that somewhere else instead, where you might be able to make a larger return. Finally, on this whole idea, I'd encourage everybody to set up a rainy day fund if you don't already have one. Some smaller amount of money that could cover 2 to 3 months worth of your groceries and your living expenses, so that everything beyond that rainy day fund automatically gets invested somehow. It's a great time to invest, as I mentioned before, and you're basically getting a 30% off sale on any stocks or equity that you purchase at the current time. Next on the list, I believe number 7 would be restaurants and bars. I enjoy going out to restaurants quite frequently. I find myself busy with work. I go for lunch. Sometimes in the evening, it's really nice to try out a new restaurant, another cuisine or something along those lines. But really, this is probably for me the area that I could save the most without really losing a lot. I've noticed in the last 2.5 weeks not being able to go out is that there's not a lot I'm missing. I'm spending an extra bit of time cooking as I had before, as I do have enough time on my hands, making some fantastic meals, getting back into learning about cooking, and there's a wealth of knowledge and resources available on the internet for that, and it's really fun. And when we do get out of this, perhaps encourage your friends to come over for a meal instead, and if you invite them, hopefully they'll invite you, and overall, every time you go to a restaurant, 2/3 of what you're spending is not for the food. It's for the experience. It's for them to cover their overhead, their profit, paying the server, paying their rent, etc., and not on the actual food that you're eating. Having worked 7 years in the restaurant industry, it's a general rule that less than 1/3 of the cost of what you eat or drink is the cost of the actual product itself. Similarly, look at your lifestyle overall. This is to see what activities that you do which cost money, how much they do, and how much this is worth to you versus a replacement that might be a lot cheaper. For instance, we enjoy the great outdoors, going for a bike ride or a hike or that kind of thing, playing with the dog. And this costs very little money compared to going out to a restaurant, as mentioned, going out to a club, or spending money on some other type of entertainment, the opera, a play, a movie, or this thing. And so if you can reduce your entertainment or your restaurant expenses or the like for $25 less per week, after 10 years, that would equal $13,000 if not invested. If invested at 7% per year, which is a reasonable amount to make, it's actually not very generous, you would have $19,200 after 10 years from saving just $25 a week. So think of that every time that you're looking at an activity or a bill or restaurant expense or your housing, for instance, where it might be multipliers of the 25 a week, and calculate if the time extra working is worth it to you. Next, number 9 would be groceries. This is actually a bit of a reverse one for me, where I feel it's actually better to splurge on groceries, because what it does by ensuring that I have a good meal at home is that it prevents me from feeling the need to go out and buying a more expensive meal. So when you go grocery shopping, it's not necessary to go over the top or buy more than you need, especially fresh things that you won't be able to eat. But other than trying to buy more fresh fruits and vegetables versus more of the factory-made things, which are less healthy for you anyways, I recommend that you splurge while grocery shopping, or while buying wine, that if that is the type of thing that you enjoy, or beer, so that you don't feel the need to go out as often. And number 10, finally, would be investing in financial education. So the most important thing is that you don't sit on a large amount of wealth that you don't need beyond your rainy day fund, and that all of it is invested intelligently. This doesn't mean necessarily paying somebody else to invest for you, because that means a percent of what you could be earning is going directly to them instead of building your investments. But there's so many books out there, magazines, blogs, vlogs such as this one, YouTube, resources that you could regularly make part of your day so that you learn more about financing and more about investing, so that you can make the smart choices. So please, I encourage you to read a ton, to view videos, to talk to others, to build a support group around the ideas of FIRE, and around learning more about saving, about investing, and about finance. I hope that the advice here will help you live happier, healthier, and more productively while in quarantine and beyond. Thank you very much for joining me tonight.